A play for peace. Vice President Mike Pence and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo traveled to Turkey and they reach a ceasefire deal. Battle for religious freedom. A Republican senator strikes back against a Democratic presidential candidate who threatened to take away tax-exempt status from churches. An American icon. We remember Democratic lawmaker Elijah Cummings. He died today at age 68. And fight for the unborn. A lawmaker tells us about the efforts to stop the use of baby body parts in federally funded research. On EWTN News Nightly for Thursday, October 17th, 2019. Good evening from Washington, D.C., and thank you for joining us for news from a Catholic perspective. I'm ytsync-en. The White House shares new information about the impeachment investigation. And over 5,000 miles away, Vice President Pence says they've reached a ceasefire deal with Turkey. White House correspondent Mark Irons brings us both stories. Good evening, Mark.
Good evening, Jason. We've seen a flurry of activity here at the White House in the last 24 hours. The acting chief of staff makes a revelation about withholding aid from Ukraine. Democrats storm out of a meeting with the president, and now a developing story, a ceasefire in Syria.
After an extended meeting with the president of Turkey, Vice President Mike Pence announced the ceasefire between Turkish and Kurdish fighters.
Turkey and the United States agreed on the priority of respecting vulnerable human life, human rights, and particularly the protection of religious and ethnic communities in the region.
Christians were caught in the middle of the growing conflict following Turkey's attack on the Kurds in Syria. The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops expressing concern, writing, "The ancient Christians and other religious minorities who have called this region home for millennia are at risk of being lost forever." The Turkish military advanced last week after President Trump pulled U.S. troops backing Kurdish fighters out of Syria. Criticized by Republican and Democratic politicians for that move, the president tweets, "I am the only person who can fight for the safety of our troops and bring them home from the ridiculous and costly endless wars and be scorned." And a meeting addressing the topic quickly turned personal last night, the president insulting the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. "There's either something wrong with her upstairs or she just plain doesn't like our great country." She had a total meltdown in the White House. But Democrats say they left after the president had the meltdown that led to verbal attacks.
He was insulting, particularly to the Speaker. She kept her cool completely, but he called her a third-rate politician.
I pray for the president all the time, and I tell him that. I pray for his safety and that of his family. I think now we have to pray for his health, because this was a very serious meltdown on the part of the president.
Today, the White House also responding to the ongoing impeachment inquiry against President Trump. Acting Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney says it's normal to withhold money from foreign governments until they meet U.S. demands, but he denies the interaction with Ukraine was wrong.
Everyone wants to believe there's a cover-up. You don't give stuff to the public and say, here it is, if you're trying to cover something up.
Responding to the chief of staff, Congressman Adam Schiff, a top Democrat leading this impeachment probe, says, "I think Mr. Mulvaney's acknowledgement means that things have gone from very, very bad to much, much worse." Jason.
White House correspondent Mark Irons. Thanks, Mark. A long-serving congressional leader is dead. Maryland Democrat Elijah Cummings was the chairman of the House Oversight Committee. That committee is investigating President Trump for possible impeachment.
I have the sad task of announcing what probably most of you already know. We have lost a great American, a decent American, a wonderful member of this body, Elijah Cummings, who died early this morning of illnesses he had been suffering from for a significant period of time.
President Trump orders flags flown at half-staff through Friday. Congressman Cummings represented Baltimore. He was 68 years old. Republican Senator Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee joins us. Now, Congress is mourning Representative Elijah Cummings. You worked with him for years. What will you most remember?
Oh, will remember him as a loyal servant of the people of Maryland, and he is one of their favorite sons. He worked very diligently in representing his constituents, and he will be missed.
And he also great debater as well, as you know. Switching gears, you just signed on to new sanctions on Turkey in retaliation for their attack on the Kurds in Syria. Will sanctions actually help?
Oh yes, sanctions will help. And Senator Graham, Senator Van Hollen, Senator Blumenthal, Senator Shaheen and I just finished a press conference. And we have announced the sanctions bill. We are encouraging the Senate to move forward on this quickly. We think that it is important to go deep and wide with these sanctions on Turkey. They are a NATO ally, but they ought not to have come into that buffer zone there in Syria. The killing of the Kurds, the Syrian Democratic Forces, the SDF, they have worked tirelessly with the United States. We should be there with them and making certain that we continue to protect this zone in northeast Syria.
And I understand that your state, Tennessee, has the largest percentage or largest population of Kurds in the country?
Largest population, we do.
Wow.
And we have, I think the number's right at 20,000 Kurds that are in the Nashville area. And we have worked with them. They are freedom-loving. They're very committed to bringing security and stability to Kurdistan and to the northeast of Syria and working with the Kurds that are there. And I will tell you this, as we have talked with them this week, they are incredibly concerned. There is just an angst and a worry about what is going on with people that they know and love who are on the ground, with people who have fought with us, who have been a part of attacking ISIS, capturing ISIS, killing ISIS, and they want to make certain that we do not abandon them, that we are true to our word. So a sanctions bill, putting that place is important, sending a message to Erdogan that he can change this and that he ought not to be attacking the Kurds. And we're going to continue to push back on Turkey and Russia and Iran and those that are trying to persecute individuals that are religious minorities and the persecution of the Christians in the region.
Of course, yesterday, though, President Trump did criticize the Kurds.
We continue to know that it is important that we stand with and that we support the Kurds. Look, you've got the SDF, who is guarding these prisons where the ISIS fighters are being held. We do not want these ISIS fighters to escape, return to their countries, return to their villages, and continue to try to hunt us down, kill us, kill the Kurds, kill individuals who are in opposition to ISIS and their caliphate. So it is important that we continue to stand with the Kurds.
Senator Marsha Blackburn, thank you so much for making time for us, a Republican from Tennessee. Thanks for your time.
Happy to be with you. Thank you.
World leaders of the Group of Seven will meet at one of President Trump's golf resorts. White House leaders say it's near the airport and is the perfect location security-wise. But government ethics watchdogs criticize the move. They say the president might profit over next year's meeting. The United Kingdom and the European Union strike a deal on Brexit. EU leaders say it's good.
This is a fair, a balanced agreement. It is testament to our commitment to finding solutions. It provides certainty where Brexit creates uncertainty. It protects the rights of our citizens, and it protects peace and stability on the island of Ireland.
UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson calls the deal excellent, but it's not final yet. The British Parliament needs to vote on it. They'll meet in a rare Saturday session. Protesters force Hong Kong's chief executive to leave the legislative chamber. That's a second day in a row. Pro-democracy protesters shouted at Carrie Lam. She was trying to speak. And yesterday, she abandoned a yearly policy speech. She later gave it on TV. And Spanish protesters set several cars on fire. They're fighting prison sentences given to Catalan separatists. 2 years ago, they declared independence from Spain, but the country stopped it. The Vatican reaches the halfway point of a major meeting of bishops from the Amazon. Our column Flynn is in Rome now, and he tells us about this main topics so far.
Good evening, Jason. We've just passed the midway point of this synod, focusing on, of course, the Amazon and its peoples. The main aim of this 3-week-long conference, how to better serve Catholics in the region, namely in the 9 South American countries which the Amazon covers. Now, the main issues facing the faithful there, the shortage of priests in the area and therefore the difficulty for them receiving the sacraments. The ordination of married men has, from the beginning of this meeting, been put forward by several bishops as one of the primary solutions.
Eu acho que, eu lhe digo com toda sinceridade, que não há outra possibilidade. Porque os povos indígenas não entendem o celibato. Eu lhe falava isso abertamente.
The inclusion of Indigenous leaders, Catholics and non-Catholics, has been a key part of this synod too, but that hasn't been without its controversy. Much of it centred around their rituals, which critics claim are pagan and have no place in the Catholic Church, particularly in the gardens of the Vatican, where Pope Francis took part in a ceremony where there was a lot of debate over the symbolic meaning of a wooden statue depicting a pregnant female figure. The question to some Catholics after these images came out: did it represent the Virgin Mary or was it a pagan symbol? Well, yesterday at a Vatican press conference, church officials were asked by journalists to clarify what the statue represented.
No, ma nessuno ha detto che era la Vergine Maria.
Non è la Vergine Maria, chi l'ha detto che è la Vergine Maria? Mi sembra che sia una figura femminile che non ha nessun valore sacro, a meno, né pagano né sacro.
So what have the Indigenous people taking part been saying to Pope Francis? Apart from their spiritual needs, they've been focusing on the ecological plight of the region, asking the pontiff to take their voice and amplify it to the world. They've described losing their homes and land to large corporations, pollution, the erosion of their culture and traditions. And one Indigenous participant spoke with passion yesterday, saying she believes some people want to see them simply disappear.
Así que también le hemos dicho que muchas instituciones y grandes empresas extractivas nos quieren debilitar. Quieren vernos divididos y nos quieren desaparecer.
Tomorrow we'll be getting more details of what exactly bishops have been saying in the small working groups. They've been taking place alongside the main speeches. And remember, the goal of all these speeches and workshops and the synod in general is to produce a final concluding document for Pope Francis. That document will contain recommendations for the Pope, and it's up to him to enact them or not. 2 weeks left to go at the synod, and remember, you can follow EWTN's in-depth coverage right across all our social media, and of course we'll have updates right here. In Rome, Colm Flynn for EWTN News Nightly.
Coming up, a senator moves to protect churches' tax-exempt status. We have a report. Republican Senator Ben Sasse defends churches. Just 1 week ago, Beto O'Rourke promised to strip away their nonprofit status if they don't hold his definition of marriage.
Is it the business of the federal government of the United States to determine true and false religion?
Senator Sasse answers his own question, saying it's not.
That is extreme intolerance. It is extreme bigotry, and it's profoundly un-American.
He's criticizing presidential candidate Beto O'Rourke, who says religious conservatives are intolerant.
There can be no reward, no benefit, no tax break for anyone or any institution, any organization in America that denies the full human rights and the full civil rights of every single one of us.
So the Democratic presidential candidate says he wants to penalize churches.
Do you think religious institutions like colleges, churches, charities, should they lose their tax-exempt status if they oppose same-sex marriage?
Yes.
Now Sasse introduces a non-binding resolution to support freedom of conscience. It would condemn O'Rourke's proposal, calling that an affront to the spirit and letter of the First Amendment to the Constitution of the United States. a move this Nebraska Republican says has now become necessary.
I don't care what some nitwit said on CNN last week to satisfy his fringy base and try to get a soundbite in a presidential debate. The American people ought to know that this body stands for the historic First Amendment. That's what we all took an oath to uphold and to defend, and that's what we ought to vote to affirm again. Let's do it.
Two Democratic candidates also disagreed with O'Rourke. That's frontrunner Elizabeth Warren and Pete Buttigieg. They say they would not strip tax-exempt status from churches, those churches that hold marriage is one man and one woman. And one lawmaker talks about the investigation into aborted babies found at the home of Dr. Ulrich Klopfer. Tonight, Indiana Congresswoman Jackie Walorski joins EWTN's Pro-Life Weekly.
And more than anything else, I wanted to get to the bottom of it, call for an investigation, and make sure it never happens again. And I wish he hadn't died a month ago. I wish I could see the day that he actually went to prison. You can catch more of Catherine Hadrow's interview tonight. That's 10 Eastern on EWTN. Up next, a pro-life lawmaker tells us about her efforts to stop federally funded research involving baby body parts. Lawmakers question the use of aborted baby parts in animal research. The Trump administration this summer said an ethics board would need to approve new applications for research using fetal tissue, but that doesn't apply to already approved grants. So 69 members of the House write Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar. This letter mentions some research, including aborted baby intestines transplanted into mice. Lawmakers ask Azar for a list of all fetal tissue projects they're funding, and they ask if the Ethics Review Board has met. Arizona Republican Debbie Lesko signed that pro-life letter. She joins us now from Capitol Hill. Representative, can you tell us more about the letter and why you decided to sign it?
You know, I decided to sign this letter to the Secretary of Health and Human Services because it's important that we treat aborted fetuses, babies, with dignity. And I'm very pleased that under the Trump administration, they are doing just that. And so when we wrote the letter, we said, but there's still projects going on that are using human fetuses for experimentation and research, and we want some more specifics on what exactly you're doing with them, what body parts you're getting, how much do they cost, what exactly is going on. And it's so important. I'm very pro-life, and I want to make sure that everybody's life is respected. And then if you have aborted fetuses that you're using for research, I just don't think that is very dignified, and that's why it's important to me.
Okay, well, we'll see what the Secretary, how he responds to you on that letter. You're also a member of the House Judiciary Committee, which will be tasked with writing articles of impeachment against the president. And today, the ambassador to the EU planned to tell investigators it's wrong to invite a foreign government to investigate a political foe. Do you agree with the ambassador on that?
Well, you know, it's unfortunate that I'm not in the hearing, even though I'm on the Judiciary Committee. The Democrats have decided to move the impeachment inquiry, if you call it that, investigations, into closed-door meetings in what we call SCIF, which is typically put forward for classified information. Now, from what I've heard from the Republican members on the committees is that there is no classified information, and this should really be public. So I don't know what the testimony has been. In fact, I tried to get into the SCIF yesterday as a member of the Judiciary Committee and find out, you know, what exactly is the testimony, because right now all we're doing is getting biased information from the Democrat staff, and the Democrat members are being leaked out to the media. So it's very one-sided because it's supposed to be closed door, it's supposed to be secret, but yet they're intentionally leaking whatever they want to leak to damage President Trump. And so I hope I can get a hold of the transcript. So far, I haven't been able to read it, or other Republican members that aren't directly on those committees. It's very unfair, and I hope that the Democrats will soon have a fair process, because no matter if you agree or not that the President of the United States had impeachable offenses, I think everyone would agree that every citizen in the United States, including the President of the United States, needs a fair process, and this is not what is happening here. This is a total political hit job on the President of the United States.
And we're going to see how that plays out in your battleground state of Arizona. President Trump only won it by about 3.5 points, so we'll see how that plays out in 2020. Any thoughts?
Well, you know, the economy is just booming, and so Arizona's jobless rate is very low, and our economy is booming as well. So I would think that given a choice between President Trump, who has a proven track record of getting things done and helping the economy and boosting jobs, compared to the socialist ideas of my Democratic colleagues that are running for president, and also some of the really support abortion. I mean, the other night on the Democrat debate, I mean, they were like debating how long people should, you know, could be aborted. I mean, this is totally, their social issues are totally contrary to what I believe most of your viewers believe in.
Hey, Representative Debbie Lesko, Republican from Arizona, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
I'm Jason Calvi, and from all of us at EWTN News Nightly, thanks for watching. We'll be back tomorrow with more news from a Catholic perspective. Good night and God bless.